Brazil, famous for its beaches, carnivals, and wonder kids. In fact, in Football Manager, they have the highest youth rating, which means that they produce the most wonder kids in the game. On the other hand, Bhutan is better known for its remoteness and dramatic landscapes than producing wonder kids in Football Manager. So, as a result, they have one of the lowest youth ratings in the game. Today though, I am going to flip that on its head, and I'm going to give Bhutan Brazil's youth rating, and Brazil Bhutan's youth rating. And in fact, I think I'm going to do it for every single FIFA nation. Countries like Germany, Spain, France, and of course Brazil are going to have some of the lowest youth ratings in the game, whereas places such as Bhutan, Andorra, and Tuvalu are going to have some of the highest. Then I'm going to simulate 100 years in the future and find out what happens. I have got two main lines of inquiry for today's video. First of all, in the future, we should be seeing the best players in the world coming from some very unlikely countries and hardly any from the typical powerhouses. However, because the individual clubs such as Man City, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich have a really big part in player development, I think we're going to see a lot less elite players in the future. So currently in this database I have, there are 25 elite players with at least 170 out of 200 current ability. And they mostly come from Brazil and Europe. There's also 33 players under the age of 21 that have a potential ability of at least 170. These are the future elite players, and as you can see, they're mostly from Brazil, England, Spain, and France. In 100 years' time, hopefully, this is going to look very different. Now, it's going to take quite a long time for this to actually start taking effect on the club, so we're going to jump forward 40 years in the future to see how things are starting to change. But interestingly, there are more elite players in the world than there were right at the start. And weirdly, they mostly come from Brazil. There's loads of players from Brazil here. Now, just to remember, I have done this correctly, haven't I? Edit nation details. We look at generated players. The youth rating is 10 out of 200. And despite that, Brazil are still producing the most elite players in the world. We also gave some big nerfs to Spain as well. They've got 3. Belgium have 2 as well. Argentina have 2 as well. So maybe the youth rating hasn't had an immediate impact. This is going to be a lot more of a long-term thing. But saying that, if we just scroll down the screen a little bit, you can see that actually a lot of other places are producing wonder kids. You've got a guy here from the Faroe Islands, a guy here from Guinea-Bissau. Hello, Editing Tom here. I don't realise until halfway through the video that I'm calling Guinea-Bissau Guyana-Bissau, which is completely wrong. I'm going to blame it on sleep, lack of it, potentially. Sorry for being so English in that, I suppose. It's not a great trait, is it? But I do fix it halfway through the video, but I just wanted to let you know now that I'm not an idiot. Well, I am, because I said it, but back to the video. Morocco, Montenegro, 2 from Norway, Serbia, Slovakia, Turkey. There's a little bit more difference to this. However, we are not seeing the wonder kids coming through from San Marino, from Bhutan, for example. I actually did download a Bhutan league for this as well, and they're actually 37th in competition reputation rankings in Asia, but that only just puts them above the Japanese 3rd division, and it puts them way below other divisions like Oman's top flight and the Maldives top flight. So I guess there's a long way to go with this. I'm also a big fan of a team in Bhutan just being called BMW. BMW FC, I love it. They have got 2 youngsters though with some massive potential ability, and that's the next line of inquiry. There are now 58 players with at least 170 current ability, and these come from all different walks of life. You've got 2 from Bhutan that we mentioned before, there's 1 from Andorra, there's 1 here from Cape Verde by looks of things, that's an interesting one. Scrolling down, again a lot from England and Spain interestingly, but Guyana-Bissau have got 1 elite player right now, but they've got 4 with massive potential ability, mostly playing as well in Portugal too, and that's a good place for them to develop. Ireland will do alright as well, they've got a few decent players coming through, Poland as well, Portugal, Serbia, Wales too, they've got 3 players coming through. So maybe 40 years wasn't long enough to see a change in the system. We need to go to 100 years to really see a big impact, but that is a long time to wait. Guyana-Bissau, by the way, 17th in world rankings right now. They're doing amazingly well. But other than Guyana-Bissau, there's no massive change in the FIFA World Rankings until you get out of the top 20. You can see Cape Verde there are in 22nd place. That is really impressive. Gambia up to 13th as well. Honduras breaking into the top 36. and Mali up in 43rd. So slowly we are seeing a shift in the balance of power here, but I am really surprised that we have seen more elite players in the world. I thought that would just absolutely plummet. We're focusing quite a lot here on international football, and if you want to follow international football in real life, well, the best place to do that is the OneFootball app. You can literally follow every single FIFA nation in the world and get right up to date with all of their recent results, their squads, everything like that. Follow your favourite nations and get push notifications straight through to your phone when anything happens in the game. I'm even talking about San Marino, Andorra, they're on there. You can follow those and get to find out if they're ever going to win an international competitive match. OneFootball are the best football app out there, so make sure you download it from the top line of the description for absolutely free. 80 years in the future, 2102, there are 24 elite players in the world, one less than 80 years ago. So that does start to suggest that maybe there are going to be less elite players in the future, although it's only one less, 80 years in the future. It's not really a very scientific conclusion yet. What is interesting though is that these 24 players come from 21 different countries. 2 from Germany, 2 from Spain, 2 from Austria, the rest all from different countries. And they're definitely not the typical countries either. Again, we've got another player from Cape Verde, but also countries like Kazakhstan, Nicaragua and Panama are also in there. I'm interested in what the youth ratings are doing over these past 80 years, and Spain's has gone from, well, 10 to 11, which isn't much, only an increase of 1. We gave Bhutan 200 and it's actually stayed at 200 surprisingly. Despite that, they are only 129th in world rankings, so they've not really made much use of it. And despite everything, Brazil are still ranked number 1 in the world. We dropped these guys to a youth rating of 10 and it's still at 10. But despite this, they are still clearly producing enough players to be number 1 in the world. All I'm learning from this basically is that youth rating doesn't seem to have much of an impact. The individual clubs and the individual club's reputation, facilities, everything like that is infinitely more important than the youth rating. Wales up in 7th place though is pretty interesting because their youth rating was increased quite a lot. It's now 91. Maybe it was 100, maybe it was 90. I can't remember which one we gave them to now, but given the small increases to everyone else, it might have just been 90 actually. But given that a lot of Welsh players are going to be generated in England by English clubs, this does suggest that the clubs are way more important than youth rating is. But again, outside of Guyana-Bissau, there's no real shocks in the top 20. I mean, Wales are 7th place, but they're usually in and around the top 20, 30 or so nations in the world, or at least have been in the last decade or so, obviously not traditionally up there. Looking from 20th down, and there's no real big shocks apart from Panama and Cape Verde. They've got themselves in 36th and 37th, so that's pretty decent. Although Panama have qualified for World Cups in real life, Cape Verde, I suppose, the bigger shock there. But the countries right down the bottom, the countries that we gave massive youth ratings to, well, they've barely moved. Like Nepal, for example, if we look at their youth rating, their generated players are 170 out of 200, and yet they've barely climbed out the bottom 200 countries in the world. The main thing I am really learning is that the clubs are just so much more important than youth rating. And when we look at under 21s with a potential ability of at least 170 out of 200, that just becomes clear because you can see England, Spain and France absolutely dominate this list of 45 players, despite them having the lowest youth ratings in the world. It's because they've got some amazing clubs, and those clubs can just develop some amazing players because they've got all the reputation. But if you think about it, you're a young player. You can either sign for Man City or BMW FC in Bhutan. You'd sign for Man City because it's Man City, even though Bhutan have the best history of developing footballers in the world because the youth rating is so high. So the reputation just seems to be so important, and because they've got the reputation, they can just attract the best players from around the world and use their amazing facilities to develop them. To be fair, there are a couple of Bulgarian players who have got really high potential ability, and one from Bhutan as well. Bulgaria always tend to do really well in these experiments for some reason. It's a bit of a meme at this stage. But if we scroll down a little bit as well, you can see that Scotland have got some really high potential ability players, but again, they're mostly playing for Liverpool, so I imagine they've come through Premier League clubs. Portugal have got a few players in there as well, Morocco too. There's nothing really here that is like crazy. Damn, that's upsetting. Right, okay, I've just woken up. It's a new day. Let's see what the results have. So we're in 2162, that's 140 years in the future. That should be more than enough time to find out what's going on in this database. And as you can see, there are 21 elite players in the world. So we're down by 4 from what we started off with. So we did say we thought the number of elite players would go down. I thought it would go down more than this. This could just be like a yearly or generational fluctuation. I don't think there's enough evidence to really say that the number of elite players has gone down consistently. We did say, though, that there were going to be more elite players from the more unusual countries, places not like Brazil, not like England, more places like Guyana-Bissau, who, by the way, have 3 of these players. 3 of them. However, you can also see there is an elite player from Brazil, 2 from England as well, 1 from Argentina, Italy, the Netherlands, 2 from Portugal. It's not changed massively. I mean, Spain have got 2 as well, and obviously we gave these countries the lowest youth ratings possible, basically, and well, they're still producing essentially the most elite players. So basically, to me, this just suggests that youth ratings do nothing at all. Or they do something, because Guyana-Bissau obviously have improved significantly here. If we look at these players' careers, they started off at Portugal, okay. In Real Madrid, this guy started off in Portugal, and this guy also started off in Portugal. The reason for this, and I've just checked Wikipedia to make sure my history is correct, is because Guinea-Bissau, which I've been saying wrong this entire video, I've been calling it Guyana-Bissau. I'm not quite sure why, I've read that and thought that's the name. But they were part of the Portuguese Empire, so there are some easy links there between Portugal and Guinea-Bissau. So it's not like they're being developed in Guinea-Bissau, they're being developed in Portugal. There are 34 players with 170 potential ability and above, and 4 of them, Guinea-Bissau, okay, so they've just become amazing basically, but they're playing in Portuguese and European leagues there, of course. There are 4 from Spain as well, 2 from England, 3 from Brazil, 2 from Argentina. If we scroll down a little bit as well, Portugal have got a couple too. Guatemala, is this Guatemala? Guatemala have got 2, so fair play, they've done pretty well out of all of this. Wales have got 2 as well. But we're still seeing, you know, the dominance of Spain, England, France in this, despite them having a terrible youth rating. So again, youth rating, although it does have some effects, clearly isn't the be-all and end-all. It's not that important, and clearly the clubs and the individual clubs' ability to develop players is so much better. Now, I did load up a couple of leagues in this database, Andorra, Bhutan, Nicaragua and Wales, to try and see if having these leagues loaded in the game would do them a lot of good, and I think it has worked out quite well, because Andorra have jumped up to 94th in world rankings. They're usually around the 200 mark. They've jumped up quite well. I think having a playable league is clearly quite important for this. Bhutan have jumped up to 60th in world rankings. That's really impressive, to be fair. We saw the Bhutan Premier League at like 33rd in continental ranking. It's now up to 16th, nothing amazing, but it has jumped up a fair bit. Nicaragua have done really well. They're up to 17th in world rankings, and this is not typical at all. They've won quite a few Gold Cups and North American Nations Leagues and things like that, so they've done pretty well out of all of this, Nicaragua. But it's Wales who have done the best. They're 7th in world rankings and have won 3 World Cups. That is just wild. So clearly as well, having a playable league in the game is also massively going to improve your chances of developing some really great top quality players. And I think it's more evidence that youth rating doesn't have much of an impact really. Although you could argue it's had a big impact here in the playable leagues, but that's only because those leagues are playable. We've seen in plenty of leagues where the AI just in control, there's no loaded or playable leagues, they've just done nothing, despite having an amazing youth rating. We can demonstrate this with the world rankings, basically, because Spain, Argentina, England, Brazil still a top 4. You could argue that could easily be a top 4 in real life. Guinea-Bissau are number 5. They've won 14 African Cup of Nations, but never won a World Cup, sadly, which is a real big shame, so I do feel bad for them. Mexico, Wales, France, Netherlands, Uruguay. I'll be honest, other than Guinea-Bissau, it's not really that unusual to see these teams maybe in around the top 10 of the world rankings, potentially. And if we scroll right down to the bottom, you've still got places like Myanmar, like Comoros, like Liechtenstein, India dropping quite a lot actually to 205th in world rankings. But of course, we gave some of these countries, like San Marino for example, they're still 199th in world rankings. We gave them a massive youth rating. It's dropped down a little bit, as you can see, but we gave them a really good one. And yet we gave Andorra a very similar one because they're very similar ranks in world FIFA rankings, and yet Andorra have gone all the way up and San Marino have done nothing. So clearly having a playable league is massively important alongside the youth rating. Youth rating just does not matter if you don't have the playable league playable. So looking at the World Cup winners, starting down here in 2022, Belgium won it twice in a row, and they're of course new winners, but they have got very far in World Cups previously, so it's not that illogical to see Belgium winning World Cups. England, France, Spain, France, Portugal, Spain. So again, it's the usual sort of suspects getting to finals, and obviously Portugal are brand new winning that one as well, but they've got there. The finalists themselves, Nigeria, Sweden, Mexico, perhaps they're a little bit new. Scotland in 2054 is brand new. Third place countries are teams that have come in the top 3 in the World Cup before as well, so there's nothing majorly changing early on in this. As we scroll up to see the rest of the World Cups, well, Spain are very good. We can see that Spain have won quite a few. We knew that Wales won 3 as well. They've been the most successful sort of new team winning World Cups. Scotland picked up a win as well. Congratulations to them. So did Denmark and Mexico in 2062. Senegal got to a final, and in fact, it looks like they're the only African side to get to a final in all of this ever, which is a bit disappointing, really. And moving into more recent history, Cape Verde have come 3rd, Ireland have come 3rd as well, but the World Cup's not changed massively, and again, this maybe just sort of points towards youth ratings not being that important unless you have a playable nation with youth ratings, such as Wales that we had in there as well. So whilst there definitely was some change in this experiment, there was certainly not as much as I was expecting there to be, and it kind of makes you think that youth ratings are just not that important, and potentially Football Manager got those slightly wrong. Let's keep the good times rolling though. Earlier on this week, I did a very different video on the channel, which I've not really done before, and I thought you guys might like it. So if you want to see the top 10 weirdest stadiums of all time, that's on screen for you right now.